Welcome to the video notes for Skill 5D. In this video, we're going to talk about how to solve word problems that include mixed numbers. And hopefully you'll remember that mixed numbers means that they are fractions and whole numbers together. So the big idea is when you're solving word problems, you need to pay extra attention to what the question is asking of you. For example, I have this. This is like the start to a word problem. Let's read it together. Every morning, Jaleel eats 2 1/3 cups of oatmeal. His little sister eats 1 3/4 cups of oatmeal. Hopefully, you noticed in this little blurb here, there's no question or a task. It's just information. The reason I started this way is I want us to start thinking of some types of questions that could be asked based on just this information. I'm going to start by drawing myself a little picture about the info. So here's Jaleel, and every morning he eats 2 1/3 cups of oatmeal. And then here's his little sister. I'm going to write LS for little sister, and she eats 1 3/4 cups of oatmeal. So let's start thinking about the types of questions that could be asked of us. One type of question could be an addition question. So if they wanted us to add, they could ask questions like, how much do they eat together? They could ask, how much do they eat in 2 days? How much does Jaleel eat in 2 days? I could solve that one with addition. So there are addition questions where I'm going to take those fractional amounts and I'm going to combine them. If I could be asked an addition question, another type of question I could be asked is a subtraction question. Subtraction questions are great for showing the difference between two things. So maybe I could ask, how much more does Jaleel eat than his little sister? Or maybe I could be asked a question like, if there were 10 cups of oatmeal in the pot, how much would be left over? Oops. These questions would require that I subtract. Now I have two other dashes. Sorry, I got my spacing off. I'll move this one down here. Other kinds of questions could be multiplication. Now we haven't got to that yet. We're going to get to that unit down the road, but if you were multiplying, they might say things like, how much oatmeal will little sister eat in 10 days? And then if we could multiply, we could always divide. We could take something and split it up into groups. We could say things like, what's a good division one? If Jaleel shared his oatmeal evenly with his dad, how much would they each get? Because in that one, he'd be splitting it up. The big idea here is there are lots of different questions that could be asked based just on the information we have. I'm just making it small so we can see. So, using this info that every morning Jaleel eats 2 1/3 cups of oatmeal and his little sister eats 1 3/4 cups of oatmeal, there are all kinds of questions that we could be asked. These aren't even all of them. We could be asked comparing questions like who eats more? We could be asked rounding questions. Um, you know, what's the nearest whole number of cups of oatmeal little sister eats? So there's lots of different questions we could be asked. The reason I bring this up is because it is crucial when you look at a story problem that you identify exactly what it is you're being asked to do. So let's take a look at an example, and to help make sure we don't miss the point of the problem, we are going to use the SCATE strategy. If you've been in my class, you should already have a notes page about SCATE, but if it's new to you, make sure you're paying attention to what it is and how you could use it. So here's the gist of the SCATE strategy. SCATE stands for situation, know, asking, try it, and explain. To make sure we're using the SCATE strategy, we set up this 4 box and then we label each box to show what we do there. The first box we put S and K. In that one, we're going to show the situation and record information that we know. In the next box, we're going to decide what they're asking, and then we're going to write an equation that we can use to figure it out. In the third box, we're going to try it. We're going to solve the problem using the different skills that we have. And in the last one, we're going to explain our answer, making sure to include the label. All right, let's check out the problem. It takes 2 1/3 hours to drive to Grandma's house, but 2 1/2 hours to get there on the bus. How much longer is a bus ride to Grandma's house compared to being driven there in a car? Now I see an error in there. Will you fix it with me? It says it takes 2 1/3 hours to drive to Grandma's house. So we'll just cross out that to drive. It was a typo. It happens. There we go. All right. So let's look at the situation. It takes 2 1/3 hours to drive to Grandma's house, but 2 1/2 hours to get there on the bus. So the situation is someone's going to their grandma's house. So here's our someone, and they're going to drive to Grandma's house. I'm going to write drive. And then they also have another way to get there. They can also get there on the bus. They're both going to the same place, so the different information isn't about the place. But I know the situation is we could drive or we could take the bus to get to Grandma's house. Now that we know the situation, we've got someone going to their grandma's house 2 different ways. Let's look at what we know. We know that the drive there takes 1 2/3 hours. The other thing we know is that it takes 2 1/2 hours to get there by bus. That's the information that we know. So we've got the situation and the information. The third box is A for asking. They're asking us to figure out what the question wants. To do that, I'm going to go back and find the question. I'm going to circle the question word. I'm going to box the focus, and I'm going to underline important words to help me understand the task. How much longer is a bus ride to Grandma's house compared to being driven there in a car? Ooh, my question word is actually question words. How much? That means I'm going to give an amount. My answer will be a number. How much longer is a bus ride to Grandma's house compared to being driven there in a car? So over here for my drawing, I drew the distance, but now what if I had to draw it like time? It takes 1 2/3 hours to drive, but it takes 2 1/2 to go by bus. I'm going to write this underneath so I have more room. So they're really asking me, how much more time does it take if we're going to go by bus than being driven in a car? If I want to find the difference between things, I've got to figure out what operation to use. Oops. So we use this strategy. Sorry. There we go. I know my operations are add, subtract, multiply, and divide. If I'm adding or multiplying, I'm putting pieces together. But when I look at my drawing here, I don't have all the pieces, so it's not about putting pieces together. On this side, where I'm subtracting or dividing, I'm taking things apart. And I feel like that's what I want to do in this problem. I want to chunk this right here, and I want to get rid of this so I can know what's left. So I want to take things apart. If I subtract, I'm just taking things apart one time. If I divide, I'm splitting things up into equal groups. Looking at my drawing, I'm not making any equal groups, so I must need to subtract. I want to take the time it takes me to ride on the bus and take away the time it takes me to get there by car so I can know the difference. So basically, I want to take the bus time minus the car time to equal the difference. Now I can go back into my problem and figure out values for bus and values for car. Looking at my situation and no box, the first one, I can see it took me 2.5 hours to go there by bus, and it took me 1 2/3 hours to go there by car. So if I take 2.5 minus 1 2/3, that should give me the difference. All right, I figured out what they're asking. I know how to tackle it. Now it's time to try it. I am trying to solve 2.5 minus 1 2/3. Looking at these, I can see that I'm going to need my LCM for 2 and 3, so I can rewrite these as fractions with common denominators. 2, 4, 6, 3, 6. All right, we have found our common denominator, and I'm going to rewrite these as sixths. So to turn my 2.5 into sixths, I'm going to multiply my numerator by 3 and my denominator by 3. That gives me 2 and 3/6. My whole number doesn't change. Then I can subtract. To turn my 1 2/3 into sixths, I'm going to multiply them both by 2. My whole number doesn't change, but now I have 4/6. All right, so I have 2 and 3/6 minus 1 and 4/6. Oh, but that's a problem. If I only have 3/6, I cannot subtract 4/6 from that. I'm going to need to borrow from my whole number and cut it up into sixths. So I'm going to split my 2 up into 1. And since I'm working with sixths, I'll cut the other whole number up into 6/6 and bring down my 3/6. And I'm still subtracting 1 and 4/6. I'm going to combine to figure out how many sixths I have, and that gives me 1 and 9/6 minus 1 and 4/6. All right, I'm going to subtract my fractions first. 9/6 minus 4/6 gives me 5/6, and 1 minus 1 is 0. I could just write that as 5/6. All right, and that brings me to E for explain. My final step is to answer the question with a sentence that includes the answer and the label. I'm going to go back and make sure that I reread the question so that when I write my answer, it makes sense. All right, we said, how much longer is a bus ride to Grandma's house compared to being driven there in a car? And they want to know how much longer. So I can write, it takes 5/6 hours longer to get to Grandma's house by bus than by car. So this is what I'm looking for. I know it's a lot of steps, but by taking it slow and going through all these steps, you'll avoid making silly errors. All right, that brings us to our try it. You can choose to work independently and check your work against mine when you're done, or you can work with me so that you can continue to make progress, and you can always pause at any time and check your work. All right, let's take a look at this next problem. Linda played Animal Crossing for 2 3/4 hours on Saturday and for 1 2/5 hours on Sunday. How much time did she spend playing Animal Crossing during the weekend? Since we can see right away that this is a story problem, my first step is going to be to set up my skate. Set up my 4 box, and I'm going to label the corners. We have S, K, A, T, E. So now that I've got my thinking space set up, I'm ready to go into the problem and start solving. All right, it says Linda played Animal Crossing for 2 3/4 hours on Saturday and for 1 2/5 hours on Sunday. So it's about Linda. Here's my situation. Here's Linda. And on Saturday, she played for 2 3/4 hours. And on Sunday, she played for 1 2/5 hours. That's the big idea. We figured out the situation. It's Linda. She's playing video games. And in this, I've already included what I know. We know it's about Linda, and we know she played for 2 3/4 hours on Saturday and for 1 2/5 hours on Sunday. So I've got a handle on the situation, and I know the information they gave us. Now we're ready to tackle asking. What are they asking us to figure out? Well, here's our question word. How much? So they're asking us how much time did she spend playing Animal Crossing during the weekend? So my focus is going to be on the time she spent playing Animal Crossing. And I'm also going to underline weekend. It's not just about one day, it's about how much time she played Animal Crossing on the weekend. So I know the weekend means Saturday and Sunday. If I want to figure out how much time she spent on the weekend, I need to combine these times. So I'm going to draw my operations organizer. Whoops. Add, subtract, multiply, and divide. Now that I built my operations organizer, I'm going to ask myself, am I putting together this information or am I taking it apart? Am I splitting it up? I'm not splitting it up. I want to combine it. So I know I'm not subtracting or multiplying. Or I'm sorry, subtracting or dividing. Next, I need to decide, now that I know I'm putting it together, am I just combining two different things or am I repeatedly combining the same stuff? I'm combining two different amounts. I'm not doing the same thing over and over. So for this problem, I'm going to be adding. We know I need to add the Saturday. Oops. Sorry, my computer is being glitchy. See if I can fix it. There we go. Let me try again. I know I need to add the Saturday time plus the Sunday time to equal the total amount for the weekend. Saturday plus Sunday equals weekend. Well, looking in the problem, our Saturday time we know was 2 3/4 hours, and our Sunday time was 1 2/5 hours. So if I combine Saturday time plus Sunday time, I should get the amount of time spent on the weekend. We figured out what they're asking, and now we have a plan for solving it. So we're on to try it. Now we're going to do the work that we planned out. We're going to do 2 3/4 plus 1 2/5. My first step is going to be rewriting this as fractions with like denominators. So I'm going to set up my LCM for 4 and 5. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 5, 10, 15, 20. Once we've got that figured out, we are ready to start rewriting these fractions. To turn my 3/4 into 20ths, I'm going to have to multiply by 5. My whole number stays the same, but now instead of 3/4, I will have 15 20ths. To that, I'm going to add the second number. To turn my 2/5 into 20ths, I have to multiply by 4 over 4. So that's going to be 1 and 8 20ths. So now I've got a new fraction problem. I've got 2 and 15 20ths plus 1 and 8 20ths. I'm ready to do my adding. I'm going to add my fractions. 15 plus 8, that's 23 20ths. And 2 plus 1 is 3. Finally, when I take a look at this, I can see that there's a whole number hiding. I can see that 23 20ths is an improper fraction. So let's break it apart. I can break 23 20ths into 20 20ths. And I have 3 20ths left over. And then I can just bring down my 3. So I've got 3 plus 20 20ths plus 3 20ths. And I know that 20 20ths is really worth 1. So that gives me 4 and 3 20ths. Finally, I have the explain step. I can explain my answer using a sentence. I'm going to go back and check the question. How much time did she spend playing Animal Crossing during the weekend? I better think about